Ismail, how's work going in the car?
Yes, good.
Okay. I arrived yesterday night, so we'll catch up probably tomorrow or over the weekend. Okay, cool. Okay, CC is in. Okay. CC was also Get House supposed to join us? I don't know.
Usman Getal just confirmed that he was joining. He confirmed like 10 minutes ago.
Okay, okay.
In that case, we'll just make him a panelist. If no, just make Getal a panelist, please. Thank you.
Okay, so we can see him. Okay.
Racine is equally joining, but he says that he's having a hard time joining the call.
So is it the link? Can somebody else send him the link?
Yes, let me try to resend him the link. Ibnu, can you resend Racine the link?
Sure,
His panelist link, please. Thank you. I think we can start in about 2 minutes.
I
Okay,
would think so too.
Usman, can we go ahead now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can. I was trying to open the agenda again, but the attachment didn't open, so but that's okay. I guess you're the master of ceremony. Just call me in when the time is right for me to make the statements and take it from there.
Wonderful. So welcome, dear colleagues and partners, and thank you for joining us for this Agrodep members meeting organized by the African Growth and Development Policy Modeling Consortium, Agrodep at Academia 2063, and the Abdul Latif Jamil Poverty Action Lab, JPAL. So we're here today to discuss activities for Agrodep as well as research funding opportunities for African scholars. My name is Laibu Take, and I'm the Director of Communication and Outreach for Academia 2063. Throughout this session, please do not hesitate to use the Q&A chat box to drop any questions, recommendations, or observations you might have for Agrodep, JPAL, and each and every one of the speakers. Without further ado, I would like to invite the Executive Chairperson of Academia 2063, Dr. Usman Badian, for welcome and opening remarks. Dr. Badian, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Butaki, and thank you everybody else who's around here. Welcome to our friends and colleagues from JPAL, and thank you for reaching out for us to have this event today about working together with JPAL, but also providing opportunities for Agrodep members. Perhaps just a couple of words on Agrodeps, the origin and why this meeting fits. We launched Agrodep back in 2010 with the intention to create a critical mass of world-class modelers across Africa through a community of practice, through grant making, through advanced training, through mentorships, and supporting publication professional journals, participations in professional conference, and the like. So we started in 2010 and have built the membership around specific calls. And the calls were each time getting about a couple of hundred, 300 or so. Only one call got probably 500 applicants. And I think about 10% are usually selected. Not that we want the 10%, but it's around 30 to 50 that came in per call. Some of the criteria of being an Agrodep member include having a PhD that is younger than 15 years. They don't want to have old folks like me who will be just sitting there not doing anything, but some who really have most of their career ahead of them and are motivated to invest. Then they have to be working in Africa with an African institution. If you work in Africa, but for a non-African institution, then you are an affiliate member. The difference between the regular member and the affiliate member is the regular member gets grants and training resources paid for, publication support, conference, and this kind of things. So the affiliate member will have access to the services which I'll be talking about of the consortium, but then the financial contributions to cover cost and other fees will be supported by the employer. So that's the difference. You also have to be working in Africa. As I said, if you were to move outside of Africa and let's say to join the JPAL team outside of Africa, then you'll still be an affiliate member, but will not be spending money on your training or on your conference or on your publications. We'll expect the JPAL team to cover that. So those are the affiliate members. We then grew the roster to about 230 members across 30 countries in Africa. That was before the COVID and before also our entire team moved out of IFPRI. We used to be the Africa department of IFPRI before we moved and migrated 2 years ago to set up shop in Africa as Academia 2063. So we haven't been very active because of COVID. We couldn't travel, we couldn't organize the training sessions, we couldn't have the workshops and the conferencing. Then we had a lot to deal with during the Food System Summit, organizing people outside of the usual Agrodep network. We're not just now about to go back to our traditional activities around Agrodep. So this is one of those opportunities to start engaging again with Agrodep members. So we welcome it and we look forward to enhancing our partnership as we go forward. The Agrodep membership is not monolithic. We have different types of skills in there. Often we group them around specific sub-networks. There's one on value chain assessment. There's one impact assessment. I think that network is going to be very much interesting what you guys have to offer here. Then there is one on trade that is supporting the African Continental Free Trade Area. We're just about to set up a new network with FAO and resilience measurements. And from our own AI and remote sensing team, we'll be setting up in the course of next year, a new network on remote and AI for agriculture. So it is more of a diverse set of folks with different backgrounds and modeling skills. And I think that this opportunity to work with JPAL is very much welcome and adds to the toolbox that our members have. So let me just say here in closing that we appreciate this opportunity and hopefully we'll have more such opportunities to enhance and deepen this partnership between Agrodep and the JPAL community. So let me stop here, Lai, and turn over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badian. Thank you for those opening remarks. And we'd like to welcome again, a very hearty welcome to all Agrodep members on this call. Please feel free, tell us in the chat where you're joining us from, tell us your name and where you're joining us from so that we can keep the conversation going. So now I would like to invite Dr. Ismail Fofana, who is the Director of the Department of Capacity and Deployment at Academia 2063, to present the planned activities for Agrodep for this year. Dr. Fofana, over to you.
Hello, Lai, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see your screen.
So let me start from the beginning. Thank you, Lai, and thank you everybody for joining this meeting and also giving us the opportunity to present some of the activities that we have planned for the year 2021-2022. So I'm Ismail Fufana. I'm the Director for Capacity and Deployment at Academia 2063. So basically, Agrodep, was established in 2020 with the ultimate goal to create a critical mass of experts in order to respond to the emerging and long-term demand for analytical knowledge across the continent. As Dr. Berjan was saying, as now we have reached a 234 membership for regular membership across 36 countries in Africa. We have 65 female members, which is close to 30%. And also we have around 38 affiliate members that are on board. So basically, Agrodep provide, support his members in various ways. One is to giving them access to data and also to cutting edge tools and models that they can use in their regular research activities. Agrodep also strengthen the capacity of members through various trainings and also facilitate the networking and outreaching activities within Africa, but also outside Africa. We also provide a variety of research grants to members to do their research activities. Agrodep migrated to Academia 2063 from IFPRI in July 2020. However, the activities of Agrodep are being implemented in collaboration with IFPRI. So basically, Agrodep is a collaborative program between the two institutions, Academia 2063 and IFPRI. I'm going to walk you through quickly some of the activities that we have planned for 2021 and 2022. So my presentation will focus on the first two. Basically, the activities has been defined on those different areas. We have 5 of them. On the technical resources library that is available for Agrodep members. We have also activities that are planned on the research network, research networking. We have activities on the governance of Agrodep, also on communication outreach, and also on the overall management of the project. But my presentation will focus on the first two. I hope that my colleagues here will complement me on the governance, the communication, and management of the project if there are any questions on these areas. But the first two are the most important for Agrodep members that are joining us today. So basically, in terms of progress, Agrodep has a rich a library of models. We have around 20 models that are available for Agrodep members with different different coverages from the multi-country economy-wide modeling to single country economy-wide to econometrics models and even local, some of the models that can address very specific issues or very specific regions. We also have or a portals, a data portals that is, very varied. We have around 300 databases that are available to Agrodep members, ranging from the uh, social accounting matrices that are used for economy-wide modeling to surveys data that are also available there. And we are also the trade data and other type of data that are available. In terms of then what is planned for 2021, 2022, in this area on the technical resources library, give me one second, I'm trying to get rid of this one. Okay, technical, yes. What is planned is just to remind you that this is activities that are led by our colleagues from IFPRI, and what is planned here is to customize some of the tools and models that are available in the library. Here, their plan to customize the MIRA Agrodep, which is a global computable general equilibrium models. There's also a plan to develop a toolbox for regional trade integration indicators, and also the development of some technical notes on econometrics techniques to analyze, market and prices, how market and prices evolve in different countries, but also the linkage between the world prices and the local prices at the country level. Now, moving to the second set of activities that are planned for the research networking. Progress have been made over the last years since Agrodep was established. In terms of memberships, we have reached a critical mass of 234 researchers, as I said, across 36 African countries. This has been done through a 6 round of membership, call for membership between 2010 and 2017. And the Agrodep affiliate membership also, basically, it's open all the year long. Basically, it's we don't make a call here, but in terms of affiliate membership, anyone can apply for the affiliate membership. Just to let you know that the affiliate membership, the difference between the regular membership and the affiliate membership is affiliate membership basically they have the same criteria as the membership, the regular membership, but the only difference is they are not based in Africa. As Dr. Bajan was saying, we have those 3 main criteria that we use to select, the memberships. They have to hold a PhD or about to have the PhD diploma, and it has to be also less than 10 years. And we have the other one, they have to be based in Africa and work for African institutions. And the third one is they need to have a good record, a publication record. And then when the member is not based in Africa, or if regular members move from Africa to another outside Africa, we still want to keep him within the network, but he will not going to be accessing to all the resources that are available to members. So those are, but if they are also still in Africa, but they move from African institution, for instance, university of any think tank to an international organizations like World Bank, IMF, or any CG center, basically he become an affiliate member also. And because that person have access to resources to undertake his own research, but we still don't want to lose him. We still want him to continue networking with regular members, so that all of them benefit from their experiences from one side and the other. In terms of the other progress that has been made over the last years is on the capacity strengthening. Basically, we organize training courses, more than 30 training courses that on data analysis and economic modelings and tools, which involve more than 350 Agrodep members. We also provide different type of research grants to members. More than 40 of them was awarded to members over the last couple of years since Agrodep was established. But also we provide travel grants to Agrodep members to participate in international conferences, to share their publications, etc., and get feedback, from their colleagues, across outside Africa and also in Africa. We also have a working paper, Agrodep working paper series that is also published. We have made more than 40 publications so far, and Agrodep members has also been publishing in peer-reviewed journal articles. Still progress over the last couple of years, we have established what we call a policy analysis and advisory services, which we call PAS. The objective of the PAS is to provide sound policy analysis and advisory services to policymakers and other stakeholders in Africa in response to address some of the emerging and long-term issues that are important to them. So far, we have established these three network of Agrodep members under the PAS initiative. We have the trade and regional integration PAS. We have the agricultural transformation and investment PAS, and then we have the value chain analysis PAS. On the trade and regional integration PAS, basically Agrodep members has been busy, involved in a couple of activities here. This group was launched in 2018 with the aim of supporting the African Continental Free Trade Area implementation. So basically, it was launched as a task force, technical task force to support this initiative. Since the Agrodep members under this in this group has been contributing to the Africa Agricultural Trade Monitor AATM, that is published annually by RISAX and Agrodep, and which has Agrodep members as co-author in many of the editions that we have already published. We have Agrodep members that has contributing to one of the work streams that work stream activities that we undertook 2 years ago when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. And this work stream was on trade, growth, and poverty effect of global commodity market disruption. So Agrodep members has contributed to this to do the analysis of the impact of commodity prices on African economies. They have also contributed to establish data system for monitoring, analyzing, and reporting on agriculture trade data under the CADEP biennial review process, but also to support the implementation of the AFCFTA. This has been done in a couple of countries. And also finally, this group has also contributing to the work that we did in the East Africa agriculture sector competitiveness work that has been done with LINK. So the group has contributed also to prioritize the value chain here that has the highest potential to contribute to the regional growth, but also at the same time advance the country or national development goals. The second group of Agrodep members on agriculture transformation investment has also contributed to many activities that has been implemented over the last couple of years here under the what we call the PARI projects. A couple of projects we had under this one, which is the program. PARI is the program of accompanying research and agricultural innovations. So Agrodep members are contributing to assess the investment agriculture transformation requirements to achieve multiple economic goals. The Malabo, the CADEP Malabo targets, the Sustainable Development Goal target, but also looking at how the different countries can achieve at the same time the Agenda 2063 targets, some of the goals there. But also the group also contributing to some of the cross-country analysis on farm-level innovation in Africa. And finally, the last group, that is the value chain analysis team, also contributing to a couple of projects over the last years. One is the assessment of the impact of series of food policy options in 3 Eastern African countries, but also they have been involved in the food security portal, which is a project led by IFPRI and funded by the European Union. And they have been involved also in the innovation and technology project aimed at scaling up small-scale irrigation technology for high value crops among smallholders, small-scale producers. And finally, also a project in Ghana on data, applying, the CADEP lab policy toolkits to identify sectors, policies, and investments to promote growth. So they have been involved in these activities. So now what we are planning under the past activities for 2021 and 2022 is to continue involving Agrodep members in some of the analysis that are going on analysis. On the regional analysis of the regional integration in Africa, the past that is already active in this area will be involved in the assessment of the IFCFTA, African Continental Free Trade area agreement. So they will continue working on that with colleagues at IFPRI, but also they will be involved in some of the initiatives that we are launching this year at Academia 2063, which is the Africa after Africa trade portal, which we call AFTOP. So basically, we'll be involving Agrodep members to take part of the analysis that need to be carried out under this initiative. Also, what we're planning to do is to, similar to what we did for the trade network or the trade group that was launched in 2018, we're planning to launch also the other 2 groups, the one on value chain analysis and the one on agriculture and transformation and investment. We'll be launching these 2 networks sometime during this year. And also we are planning to have a new thematic groups, like Dr. Bajan was saying. We'd like to have one on artificial intelligence and remote sensing, and one on resilience measurement and analysis in collaboration with FAO here. Beyond now the past, we still are planning to have a couple of activities for Agrodep this year. One is the membership survey and roster evaluation. So basically here we used to do, like we did sometime in 2019, where we surveyed members in their different research activities that they have been undertaking, their area of interest. This information is important for us to organize Agrodep members around different thematic groups and network, and also to see how Agrodep members has been busy, doing research, the new area they have been developing, area of interest for them, etc. That will help us when there are demands, for support, technical support to identify the Agrodep members based on their thematic areas and based on the region that they are also located. The other activities that we want to undertake is to continue expanding the affiliate membership. We have around 36 members, so we want to grow this membership. Basically, the survey that we're going to do will also help us to identify those Agrodep members who has moved outside Africa or moved to international institution in Africa. So we'll be inviting them to join the affiliate members so that we keep interacting with them. We have also planned to have the members meetings sometime during this year, where we bring members together to present, their latest research activities, to get input from their peers to improve whatever they are doing. But also, this is going to be the opportunity for us also to bring other experts, non-Agrodep experts, who can also share their latest experience in developing cutting-edge tools, so that Agrodep members will be informed, but also we create that networking with them so that the members continue to keep learning, and improving, their skills, strengthening their skills. And we're still going to have capacity strengthening and training activities during this year. This will be organized around the PARs, as said. So there are still a lot of PARs that are, will be active this year, and then we'll be also organizing trainings and to help Agrodep members to learn probably new method also to strengthen their capacity. Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to stop here. I did not talk about the other three. The one on governance. I hope that Dr. Bajan will fill that gap, and one on communication for Agrodep, and then Dr. Lai probably will fill that gap for us, and the management one. And Dr. Augustine also, I hope that you guys can come and fill that gap. Thank you very much. Back to you, Lai.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fofana, for that presentation. If you have any questions for Dr. Fofana, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A chat. There will be a session for questions and answers. Thank you, Dr. Fofana. Moving on to part 2 of the session, where we will learn more about JPAL. First up will be Ms. Amy Hare, Policy Manager at JPAL Africa, and she will be making a presentation on an introduction to JPAL. Over to you, Amy.
Fabulous,
Ismail,
thank you.
Can you start sharing, Ismail, please?
Fabulous. Just gonna share my screen quickly. And let's put it on the slideshow. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for inviting us to join the session today. Really excited to be here with you all and to share some of our different funding opportunities and research opportunities for African scholars. So I'm Amy, and I'm a policy manager based at JPAL Africa, and I would like to welcome you to the session. So today we will be having a number of different speakers from our side. So I'll be kind of just giving you a brief overview of JPAL and some of the work that we do. I'll then be handing over to Tessie, who will be talking a little bit more about one of our research initiatives called the Digital Identification and Finance Initiative. Claire will be taking us through the Jobs and Opportunities Initiative, which is kind of thinking about labor markets and how workers kind of interact with firms. And then finally, Emily will be taking us through DAISY to kind of talk through the different research areas within this very exciting kind of agriculture and digital initiative. And then finally, I'm going to kind of wrap us up with some different tips and tricks when it comes to writing grant proposals. Myself and colleagues have been very involved in reviewing a number of grant proposals, and we don't make the final decisions on any of the grants, but we have reviewed a number of proposals. And so we've kind of synthesized some of those lessons, which we hope to share so that any proposals that come through are kind of as strong as they can be. So yeah, that's the plan for the rest of the session from our side. Great, so to give you a bit more background about JPAL, I suspect many of you might know of us already, but I thought I'd give you just a brief overview of what we do to kind of start us off and kind of frame this conversation. So JPAL is an international research center, and we kind of are anchored by this network of researchers who are at a number of top universities who all kind of specialize in these randomized controlled trials, or RCTs. And we as staff kind of work with these affiliated professors to kind of both run research projects as well as disseminate evidence that has been generated. And our affiliated professors work across a number of different sectors. So you'll see there are a number shown here. But the overall aim has always been and is always to reduce poverty, and to do this by generating really good evidence so that policymakers can make good decisions for the folks on the ground. And we do this through running these randomized evaluations, or randomized impact evaluations, RCTs, with the intention that this is one of the possible methods that folks could use to try and understand the impact of a program. So the professors that we work with are really interested in finding causality or kind of quantifying causality and understanding kind of the exact impact of a program. And so to give you a flavor of how we measure impact, although I'm sure this is probably a lot of you already know this, we would be looking at both a treatment group, so those who kind of looking at outcomes sometime after the program has been introduced, and then looking at outcomes for a group where the program may have not been introduced. So comparing both the treatment group and the sort of comparison counterfactual group. And we know that this sort of counterfactual or comparison group is important. And why is important? I have a little graph here which shows kind of over time, an outcome over time. If a government or an NGO wants to implement some sort of program and have a specific intervention, which is kind of shown by this orange line, we would then be tracking the outcome over time and kind of monitoring what we see. But if we were comparing the outcomes over time with the outcomes when we started, so the red and purple dot, we might suppose that the intervention had a negative effect, because we can see that the outcome is decreasing after the intervention has been introduced. But we don't know what would have happened if that same group hadn't had that intervention. So here we see the counterfactual group or the comparison group, and we can now compare the red dot and the blue dot to see the actual impact. So in this case, if the program hadn't been introduced, the outcomes would have been far lower than they would have been where we see the actual program that has been introduced. And so an example of this could be a cash grant that is given. So that's the intervention. And it's during COVID. So one would assume that, or see that most people, their outcomes had decreased over time. But without that cash grant, we would see that people would have been much worse off. So there was some sort of resilience that happened through this cash grant. And there was a positive impact of the cash grant on the overall outcomes. So JPAL is very interested in understanding and quantifying this impact and figuring out how to unpack and identify this counterfactual is quite critical to the work that we do. And as many of you might know, we have some Nobel laureates who are kind of part of our affiliated network. So Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo are our two co-founders, and Michael Kramer is one of our long-standing affiliates. And they all won the Nobel Prize, or collaboratively won the Nobel Prize in 2019 for their work on poverty and using this randomized evaluation method. And we have a number of evaluations across the world in many different countries. And yeah, so I think, so that gives you a flavor of who JPAL is. We're now going to be talking a little bit more about our work specifically for African scholars. So this is a sort of a component of the work that's fairly new to us. But I kind of recognize that within research, there are many barriers to entry. Some of these could include access to research funding, kind of being connected enough to the network, and then exposure to training on RCTs. And so we have designed some African scholars programs to try and mitigate some of these barriers. And the way we have designed these programs has some sort of core elements. So the first core element is research funding. We have a number of initiatives that my colleagues will be taking us through in a moment, where African scholars are then eligible to apply in for our research funding. And kind of coupled with that is a mentorship program. So for all African scholars who are successful in receiving, kind of getting through that grant application, they are matched with a mentor who is a JPAL affiliate or a JPAL invited researcher who kind of acts as a mentor throughout the life of the project. So we see this as a sort of a colleague type relationship. It's not a co-authoring relationship, but one where the African scholar team can go to this mentor, get feedback on IRBs or survey instruments, get some different ideas in the mix, and have somebody to kind of touch point with as they're going through their research process. Other elements of our African Scholars Program also include some training and capacity building. So we have a number of webinars and online trainings. We also, in some instances, also offer our MicroMaster scholarships to African scholars. And then the fourth component is kind of helping scholars move their project from the stage it's at to the next level. So we think of our kind of the research process being quite iterative, and moving projects from pilots to full RCTs. And so part of our work as staff is also kind of helping and facilitating that movement of projects up the research pipeline. So that gives you a sense of kind of the different elements. We also have quite strict definitions when it comes to who is eligible as an African scholar. So we have two key definitions that I'd like to just highlight. So we have a resident African scholar definition. So those are folks who have completed their PhD in an economics or related field and who are based at an academic institution in Africa. And then we have a non-resident African scholar definition, which is those who have completed high school in Africa, have completed their PhD in economics or related field, but are based at an academic institution outside of Africa. And just to say that for all eligible African scholars, only one individual on that PI, on that academic team need to fulfill this definition. So if there are 3 or 4 academics on the paper or on the project, only one of them has to have this eligibility criteria in order to be able to apply for African Scholars programs. Great, so those are kind of the key components. I am now going to hand over to our different initiatives to take you through kind of the specifics around those particular topics. Each research initiative has a slight variation of a different kind of research area. So they'll be taking us through kind of what the scope of the initiative is, as well as some of the details around applying for that specific one. And so I'll invite Tessie to take us through Digify.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Tessie Descano, or Teresa, and I'm a policy manager for Digify, which stands for Digital Identification and Finance Initiative. Let me quickly just put a timer so I don't go over. Great. So I think, can we move to, great, thank you. So I think to start, with the broad mandate that JPA has of poverty reduction using evidence-based policy, Digify in particular focuses on digital identification and digital payments in sub-Saharan Africa. The reason why we do this and why this matters is because it is estimated that 1 billion people worldwide today have no legal form of identification. And half of this billion live in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, as a result of this, the United Nations has set a goal through the Sustainable Development Goals to provide legal identity for all by 2030, which is very ambitious. At the same time, we're seeing that many countries in sub-Saharan Africa have begun or are planning to begin to invest huge amounts of money to roll out new digital identification reforms. Now, the idea behind this is that, without a legal identity, people cannot access basic government services. They can't, access the legal system. They can access legal services, and they can't really engage or be part of, several basic and several economic opportunities. So I think, but why we exist, this initiative exists, is because even though there's this growing impetus and interest, both from governments and multilaterals, to kind of roll out new digital identification reform and digital payment reform, there is very little rigorous evidence on the actual impact of these reforms and how best to leverage them and roll them out in different settings. Thank you. So Digify's aim is really to co-generate a body of rigorous evidence on digital IDs and digital payments in sub-Saharan Africa, and use this evidence to inform policy with, of course, the end goal to improve life. How do we do this? We do this by really working to identify problems, identify key policy priorities, and really then kind of fund, work with governments first, and maybe try to establish interest to do research, but also to kind of the bread and butter of what we do is fund research that will help address some of these questions, and kind of help also our affiliates and African scholars to really help them in having successful programs, both through providing research support, but also policy support. We collaborate with governments, the private sector, NGOs, and multilaterals, so that is the implementers. And we also, of course, work very closely with our JPAL affiliates, invited researchers, African scholars, and PhD students. Our chairs of the initiative are Tavneet Suri, who is a professor of economics at MIT. She has done extensive work trying to study the impacts of mobile money across the continent, but specifically in Kenya. She's done a lot of work there. And then Jenny Aker, who is a professor of economics, also in Boston, but in Tufts University, who has done a lot of kind of groundbreaking research on digital payment reforms in Niger and in West Africa. Great. So who are we? I'm the one speaking now. My name is Teresa Lescano. I'm a policy manager with Digify. Before you heard my colleague Amy, she's also a policy manager at Digify. We then have 5 other staff, a policy associate, 2 postdocs, a project coordinator, and our director, aside from the chairs. Great. So I think, when we are thinking about this large topic, which is, excuse me, digital identification and digital payments, we really think about this from 4 different angles. The first is the supply side. So here we're really thinking about these questions or subset of questions from the government's perspective. So what does that mean? Here we are interested to think about what considerations government needs to take into account before rolling out a new digital ID or a new digital payment platform. What do governments need to keep in mind to ensure that there's not exclusion of the marginalized populations, or that not only the urban areas will be included? How can governments set up a system where the data they collect can then be linked to other functional IDs, and so forth? I'll give you some other examples in the next slide, but that would be the supply side. Then we think about the demand side. So here we're really thinking about kind of what matters from the citizen's perspective. So, how can you encourage take up of a new ID? How to address appropriately privacy concerns when rolling out these big data collection exercises. What does it take? What does it mean for transactions costs? How to ensure that doesn't exclude citizens that are eligible to enroll in a new ID. Then the third bucket of questions is the supply and demand side, which is basically questions that are important and kind of crucial to both sides, so the government and the citizens. And here, of course, a very important kind of topic is taxation. As you all, I'm sure, know very well, it requires both a give and take of both the government and the citizen to ensure that the system is well in place and is working correctly. And then finally, we look at externality. So here is really thinking about, what are the indirect effects of rolling out these new digitalization reforms? What is the impact of employment? What is the impact of migration? Is it really going to affect businesses able to provide better services for their citizens, for their clients, and so forth? Again, I think this is just, this is a very kind of high level overview, but if you are interested in this, we have a framing paper that goes into much more depth about looking at these 4 buckets, and kind of, I really recommend you to go and look at that resource if you want to find out more about some of the kind of the key questions that we think about from the Digify's. I'm just taking the time, not doing very well. Okay, and then so some of the key questions that we think about that, these are examples that can hopefully bring more to life about the previous slide I just read through. So I think, so the kind of thinking about this from a holistic approach, what are the best ways to design a digital ID and link services for that ID at the greatest impact for the lowest cost? That's one of the kind of main questions that we have. But then looking at it from the government's perspective, so this would be the supply side. So, how can governments increase trust in digital IDs? What is the best way to register citizens? How to communicate, when these new reforms come out, to ensure that as many people about them can hear about them? What are the ideal protocols, and so forth? Then, how can digital IDs assist with targeting and leakages reduction in public programs? Do digital IDs assist or hinder in reaching marginalized populations? These are kind of some of the questions that we are very interested in. And then from the citizen's perspective, a good example would be, do digital IDs encourage or dissuade take-up of government programs? And how do digital IDs affect voter participation, and those attachments affect policy decisions? But again, as I mentioned, like, if you are interested in finding out more, please don't hesitate to go to the resource of that we can put on the link as well for easy access. And so then going into what funding opportunities Digify offers. So I think the first bucket, there's 3 main buckets, and the first is the proposal development grant, where the cap is 10,000. And this really is for when you do have a question, but you really want to tease out kind of the partners. You know, you want to make sure that the question actually encompasses what it should. That's when you would be, or you want to travel to meet other partners to really like assess their interest in kind of collaborating on a research project. That's when there would be eligibility for the proposal development grant. Then the second bucket, it would be for the pilot or monitoring systems. This is the cap is set at 75,000, and this is when, you know, the research team has a clear idea of the question, but, you know, they want to test the design and kind of the take up before going into and funding doing a full RCT on that particular program. And then the full RCT is kind of the main bucket of funding that we provide, and that's the cap at 400,000. So African scholars who have successfully completed a pilot are then eligible to apply for the RCT funding. I think I can then, So, sorry, in case I didn't mention it. So African scholars are eligible to apply to the proposal development grant or the pilot grants, but they will need to complete a pilot before being eligible to apply for the RCT funding. Great. So Digify has so far funded 31 projects across, I believe, 13 countries. Out of these, we funded 5 RCTs, 12 pilots, and 14 proposal development grants. As you can see from the map here, this is where we have funded the projects. There's a lot in Ghana and Nigeria, and a few in East Africa. But I think we are very interested in proposals that can in West Africa, but also in East Africa that can help kind of address some of the key questions that we have, as well as policymakers and other key partners in our space. Thank you. So how does the Digify application process work? I think Amy briefly mentioned this, but so how it happens at Digify, which I'm sure Claire will go through how it happens, and Emily as well in their different initiatives. But so in Digify, it starts with the proposal, pre-proposal submission, which is a very short form, I think 2 or 3 questions, which kind of just outlines like what your idea is. Then this is then reviewed by Digify co-chairs, so Tavni Suri and Jenny Aker, to ensure that, you know, the idea falls within the scope of work of Digify. Often we will then have a call with the African Scholar team to just discuss the idea and see if they have any questions, and kind of tease out if we see any kind of potential pitfalls, and just confirming eligibility of the team to apply for funding. Then if they get a green light at the pre-proposal stage, then you will be asked to apply for a full proposal, where the proposal then has to go from several more reviews. Of course, the application is more extensive, and it goes through the staff review. Then there's an academic peer review, where we select some of our affiliates to randomly read the proposal. And then it goes to the Digify board. After all of these people have reviewed the proposal, then Digify, the board makes the final decision on whether we go forward with the funding. The nenext stage is when they're matched with a mentor. Amy mentioned this briefly, where this is not co-ownership of the project. It's more like a support and a friendly kind of friendly support you can have to make sure that you're going in the right way, and this is something that I think has worked pretty well. And then once that is set, then the proposal acceptance is finalized. I think then I will stop speaking now. I think I've gone over 2 minutes, so sorry about that, but I'll hand it over to, I think, my colleague Claire.
Cool. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Just want to check.
We can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, cool. All right, so I'll talk about JOY, the Jobs and Opportunities Initiative. Some of the things are specific to this initiative, but a lot of what Tessie talked about at the process of how funding works and African scholar eligibility is similar. So I'll touch on that, but won't go into as much detail as Tessie, because it'll just be repetitive for you. All right, so JOY was launched because I think we all know that millions of people around the world are either unemployed or underemployed or stuck in poor quality jobs. And so specifically across the globe in 2020, more than 220 million people were unemployed, and that rate is typically 3 times higher for youth. And I think we know unemployment can contribute to low productivity, low incomes, and reduced social cohesion. And then even for people that do have work, many face low earnings. They're still actually in poverty, even though they're working. They work long, difficult hours. They're in unsafe working conditions, and they don't have any benefits. So there's a wide range of labor issues that still need to be addressed, particularly in Africa. And governments and NGOs have been responding with active labor market policies and private sector reforms for many years now, and continuing to try and address the problem. But we still are lacking kind of coherent and comprehensive evidence on what works best. And so this makes it really hard to give helpful input to policymakers on how they should be targeting their labor policy if we don't yet have a fully strong enough evidence base from which to draw on. So JOY applies the methodology of randomized evaluations because we're JPAL, so part of JPAL, so it's all randomized evaluations, but we apply that method to test innovative solutions to employment challenges. And the research focuses on 3 main buckets of work, as you can see here on the slide: training and matching, job creation, and the future of jobs. So training and matching really focuses on programs, sorry, Amy, stay on the previous slide. Okay. So training and matching includes programs that try to improve the effectiveness and cost effectiveness of programs that try to get unemployed people into jobs, as well as programs that train workers both with hard skills and soft skills in order to make them suitable for employment. Job creation is probably self-explanatory, so that can refer to interventions that create new forms. It refers to job interventions that create new forms of employment, either through like a government public works program or through supporting entrepreneurs and helping them to grow their businesses so that they hire more people. And in the third bucket, the future of jobs refers to programs that prepare workers for the changing demands of the labor market, such as jobs going online, more jobs being like gig jobs like Uber, supporting informal workers to access the formal labor market and social protection, and then also interventions that try to encourage or support more women to enter the labor market. Now you can go to the next slide. So just to be concrete about some of the questions that you might, that we're looking to fund under these 3 buckets. So under training and matching, for example, which design features of skill training programs have the most impact? There are a lot of different programs around, but knowing which are the most effective is not actually clear yet. What are the most effective ways to align people's expectations with the realities of the labor market? So we find lots of youth study degrees that aren't being demanded in the labor market in which they're based. So how do we best align expectations with what the reality is? And then, for example, which policies are most effective at reducing hiring discrimination, whatever basis that discrimination might take in a particular situation. In the second bucket of work, job creation, some examples. What are effective targeting mechanisms to identify high potential entrepreneurs? So this is an area of great interest. A lot of people can try to be entrepreneurs, but it's actually quite a small subset that are really high potential, high growth. And then how do we actually identify them? That's quite a key question. And another question, what are the key constraints that women and youth face to running successful businesses, and what forms of alternative business training are best suited to help them overcome those constraints? And then in our third bucket, the future of jobs, we've got questions like, how can economies best prepare their workers for the changing demands of the labor market, kind of as I said before. And then another more specific one, how can economies harness technology advances to improve job opportunities for both high-skilled and lower-skilled workers? For example, how can programs best connect marginalized youth to internet-based employment? And that's a really big focus, especially after COVID, where so many jobs went online. So just to show you who the team is, our academic leadership or our co-chairs are Marianne Bertrand from the University of Chicago and Bruno Capon from Paris School of Economics. And then the staff, the group of staff that run the Labor Desk and the Jobs and Opportunity Initiative includes Lisa, myself, Natalie, and Jared. Our funding opportunities are very similar to Digify's, so I don't need to go into too much detail. Digify has an additional type of funding for monitoring systems that Joy does not have, but otherwise it's very similar. So proposal development grants up to $10,000 for very initial ideas, partnership building. Sorry, I made a mistake on the slide. It should just say pilots, not pilots and monitoring systems. That's my fault. Up to the value of $75,000. So that's you've got an idea and you kind of want to pilot it or check take up, check survey instruments, but you're not quite at the full RCT stage, and then the full randomized evaluation up to $400,000 for everything's good to go. You've got your idea and you want to roll the evaluation out at a large scale. Same under the Digify model, that our African scholars would be paired with a researcher within our network as a mentor to provide some guidance. And with Joy, the eligibility is only resident African scholars in sub-Saharan Africa. So unlike Digify, we cannot fund African scholars based outside of sub-Saharan Africa. But other than that, the eligibility is the same. And same, it doesn't actually say this here, but just to reiterate, I think Amy said it, only one member of the team has to meet this definition. So teams can be made up of people based in different locations, including outside of Africa, as well as people based at think tanks, but one person has to meet this definition. And then as with Digify, our full randomized evaluation funding is only open to African scholars who've completed a pilot with JPAL. Cool, thanks, Amy. So we run 2 set requests for proposals or RFPs each year in spring and fall. So our fall one will be opening on the 28th of July, so coming up quite soon. Letters of interest are always due about 4 weeks later. So in this case, on the 25th of August, and that's just a short description of what you'd like to do with an indicative budget, but not fully fleshed out. And then there's about a 6-week period between that and the full proposals being due. And for African scholar teams, during that period, we will invite you to submit a full proposal if your idea fits within Joy's scope and you qualify as an African scholar, and we'll offer to hold a pre-proposal call with you to go through your proposal. Thank you. I think that is it. I'll hand over to Emily.
Thanks so much, Claire. Since a lot of the process is about the same between both Joy and Digify, I'll focus more on what makes DAISY different. So next slide. Thanks, Amy. So DAISY is the Digital Agricultural Innovations and Services Initiative, and it's a competitive research fund that supports innovative policy-relevant research on the availability, quality, and reach of bundled digital agricultural services and solutions for small-scale agricultural producers based in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And we as well focus on randomized control trials or randomized evaluations as the main methodology funded through this initiative. Next slide. So as many of you know, agriculture remains central to improving standards of living in low and middle income countries and reducing extreme poverty and hunger. A large body of evidence has already documented the importance of agricultural productivity for improvements in farmer welfare, as well as longer-term development outcomes, a process often referred to as agricultural transformation, which your group is also specializing in as part of one of their PAASs. So implementers are increasingly using digital technologies to deliver information, financial services, insurance, trading platforms, market access mechanisms, and many other services through these digital technologies. And often these services are bundled or integrated under one program or platform, which can be a more timely and lower cost way to reach a large number of farmers at one time. Next slide. So although these links between agricultural productivity, poverty reduction, and long-run economic development have been widely studied, agricultural productivity remains relatively stagnant in much of sub-Saharan Africa and parts of South Asia. And the adoption of individual technologies like credit provision seems to do little to affect farmers' long-term growth and welfare. So this leads us to ask the questions, what is preventing the use of agricultural technologies that would enable productivity gains and increases across sub-Saharan Africa? If multiple productivity constraints hold or bind, what products or bundles can alleviate these constraints at one time? And how can we leverage digital technology to do this, as well as to more broadly improve access options and service delivery? But despite rapid development and growth by implementers in this space, the evidence base on which digitally enabled services, their targeting mechanisms and delivery models, so which of these are effective at improving small-scale farmers' welfare, remains relatively limited. And there's even less evidence on the availability of how to reach and benefit and empower women through these services. Next slide. So this initiative is co-managed by the Center for Effective Global Action at UC Berkeley, as well as JPAL's global office at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and is generously supported by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The way that we plan to run our initiative is outlined here on the slide, and that's mainly through mobilizing the research community, doing policy outreach and matchmaking for project development, scaling research that's been found to be effective, and launching a regional scholars program. Next slide. Our team is led by 3 academics. So Jennifer Burney at UC San Diego, Robert Osai at the University of Ghana, and Tavneet Suri at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And the team that leads is based at Berkeley and MIT. And while we're all based in the United States, we work very closely with other JPAL regional offices like JPAL Africa and other initiatives, as well as offices of the Innovations in Poverty Action that are based in many different countries across sub-Saharan Africa. We're also currently recruiting a team member to be based somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa as we speak. So if hopefully, fingers crossed, stay tuned for a new staff member on this slide in presentations to come. Next slide. So DAISY aims to generate a rigorous evidence base that carefully identifies whether digital tools and bundled approaches are effective at improving smallholder farmer outcomes, connecting farmers to markets, and more broadly expanding commercialization in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And we plan to do this through collaborations with the private sector, governments, NGOs, service providers, as well as the SIGA and JPAL Researchers Network. Next slide. So while DAISY is brand new and has yet to launch, these are some key themes that we'll be focusing on, and a framing paper will be released in the next few weeks that dive more deeply into relevant questions under these 6 key themes that I'll read out in a second. So the first is uptake and use of digital and bundled services in agriculture. The second key area is impacts of digital and bundled services on agricultural outcomes like diversification into new crops, yields, income, and perceived ability of farmers to cope with stressors or shocks. A third area is identifying which factors may increase the ability of bundles relative to their individual components when not delivered as a bundle to improve these same agricultural outcomes, bundled platform externalities, general equilibrium effects, and spillovers as a result of these programs, how bundles or agricultural services can be most effective in addressing gender-specific constraints, and finally, enabling a conducive environment for digital and bundled agricultural service innovation, scaling, and sustainability. All of these themes that I just read out and listed on the slide should be considered through at least one of the 3 cross-cutting themes here on the right side, which are gender, climate resilience and resource use, or youth and agriculture. And all funded projects through DAISY will need to speak to at least one of these cross-cutting themes, as well as their generalized research question. Next slide. So similar to Joy, DAISY funds resident African scholars. So this is anyone who's completed a PhD in economics, agricultural economics, or agricultural resource economics, or a related empirical field, and currently hold an academic or research position at a university based in South Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa. Again, the funding categories are very similar. So proposal development or travel grants at $10,000, or pilot or A/B testing grants at $75,000, and successful pilots funded through DAISY will be eligible to also apply for full randomized evaluation funding and subsequent RFPs. So we plan to launch our first RFP, Amy, you can go to the next slide, in July. So next month, hopefully around July 15th. So stay tuned for that. And then once the RFP launches, we'll hold an informational webinar for interested and eligible regional scholars at the end of July. And then letters of interest, as with the pre-proposal form that you heard about with Digify, will be due in mid-August. And then successful pre-proposal forms will be invited to submit a full proposal due in late September. This is subject to change based on the launch of the RFP, but these are sort of the general timelines, and you can find more information on our website, which is linked on the slide. Amy, I'll hand it back to you at this point. Fabulous. Thank you, Emily. Great. So that gives you a flavor for the different initiatives we have and the different sort of research topics where we're looking to fund more research and more research from African scholars. I'm now going to take us through just a brief overview of some of our tips and tricks around writing a winning proposal. As I said at the start, myself and colleagues have reviewed a number of proposals and have kind of consolidated some of the lessons learned through the review, kind of trying to pull out some of the key components of what makes a strong proposal and one that's more likely to be successful. So some of the key areas that we've identified are, the first is that the idea is strong. So a research idea that has a kind of a good foundation is a good one. And I'll go a little bit more detail into all of these, but that's kind of the first component. The second is a clear pathway to a randomized evaluation, or an RCT. As JPAL, we're kind of looking for that kind of element as part of the proposal. One that follows the application guidelines is always a good thing to have. And then finally, the fourth bucket is around kind of how the proposal is written, that it's succinct and simple and clearly articulated is pretty important as well. So on the first component around the research idea, I'd say, broadly speaking, there are a couple of key kind of areas that help make a proposal and research idea, will help strengthen the research idea. And some of the things that we would be looking at from the review side, the first being that the question is academically interesting. So we would want to make sure that the project is kind of contributing to the broader literature, and that it's kind of pushing the frontier in some ways when it comes to what we know about the topic. The second is that it's policy relevant. This is critical across all our JPAL initiatives. We want to make sure that the research that's generated has application to real world kind of policy questions, and can be useful for policymakers. So kind of getting that sweet spot between both kind of pushing the frontier academically and being policy relevant is really where we're keen to fund those kinds of projects. Then the third thing is about the kind of the scope of the initiative. So making sure that the research idea is kind of within the research agenda of that specific initiative. And as colleagues have explained today, you'll be able to read the framing papers of each of the different initiatives to be able to make sure that the question you're asking and trying to answer through your proposal is applicable to that specific initiative. And then I think the final kind of component for this bucket of suggestions is around an RCT-able idea. So as we are JPAL, we are looking to fund projects that have sort of this pathway to an RCT. And so the question that you're asking needs to be kind of a cause and effect type question, or at least be building towards one in the future. All right, I guess this kind of bleeds over, that last comment kind of moved also to this next sort of bucket about the pathway to a randomized evaluation. So here we're really wanting to see kind of what the intervention, well, we're wanting to see that there is some sort of intervention or program that you are planning to evaluate or are proposing to evaluate sometime in the future. So being able to see that quite clearly in your proposal is always a good thing in our books. And I think that there are also some kind of key signals that we were looking for in terms of what's important along the line of getting that project towards a full RCT. And I think the first is around, or one of those components is around buy-in from the implementing partner. So being able to show that letter of interest is really important, especially at the pilot level. And then being able to describe how that pilot would actually be leading towards, how you're envisioning that pilot would lead towards a larger RCT. And I think even for the proposal development grants, I think you don't need to have as clear a research question because the intention of the grant is to build towards that. But it's always good to have some sort of vision for where you think it could go and how you propose it may turn into an RCT in the future. Then the third bucket was around application guidelines. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but there are a couple of different sort of expectations around what one would need to include as part of your application. So this would be once your proposal has kind of been accepted as part of the pre-proposal or letter of interest round, then there are certain requirements that we need to be able to review this full proposal. And so being quite conscious of the different components is also really important. But we will be, if you are successful at that round, you'll get a lot more information about what you need to include in that full proposal. And then the final bucket was around proposals being kind of clearly written. So I think often we have proposals where the research idea is really strong, but it's just not communicated in a way in a way that reviewers would respond well to. So I think working a bit on the writing side can really go a long way within the review process. And so some sort of tips and tricks that we think around kind of the writing side, we've written a few down here. So kind of building a structure before you start, having a very clear title that describes your research question quite clearly, being able to cite the relevant literature. And I think it's useful to, if there are kind of existing RCTs or existing empirical work within that field that relate to the question very closely, making sure you pop those in there as well. Using clear and concise language, and then being able to review your own proposal and potentially even getting a colleague or a friend to review it before you submit it, just so that if there's somebody who's very fresh to the idea, is reading it, is it communicated in a way that they would understand? And we've got a couple of different writing resources that you might be interested in. I can share these slides with the team afterwards, so you'll have those links of different writing resources. And maybe even you want to have a look at the JPAL website. There are a number of different RCTs on that. So if you feel like you want to be inspired by some of them, that's also a good resource. Great. So I think the next steps from our side, if you are interested in submitting a proposal, you can always go and have a look at our website. I'd encourage you also to sign up to our African Scholars Registry if you haven't already, because that would be the main form of communication if we have new funding rounds. I think when DAISY launches, we'll probably be sharing that launch through that registry. And then I guess if you have more questions for any of our teams, feel free to email us with questions. And yeah, then feel free to submit a pre-proposal or letter of interest when the time is right. So I think that is all from our side. I'm going to see if there are any questions or comments. Otherwise, I'll hand back.
Thank you, Amy, and the JPAL team for your presentations. Thank you so much. And now the floor is open. We have a few questions already. The first one would be for Dr. Fofana. So this is more like a comment. Perhaps you want to weigh in on this. This is from Adebayo Shitu from Nigeria. And they say many Agrodep members are silently making other contributions derived from capacity building we enjoyed under Agrodep. Perhaps a survey to document this could help update the last presentation. Dr. Fofana, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, Lai, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, thank you. I think that is a comment. You know, it's well taken. Basically, I talk about the surveys. You know, the roster survey that we are planning to have this year. So that will cover that area. You know, collect that kind of information from members to see how they have been contributing. You know, in terms of scientific research output. And then hopefully, we'll be able to document all that, and share it with the wider network of Agrodep members. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Ismail. So we have one from Ari Fellow, and the question is, how can an African scholar be involved in a JPAL pilot study? Amy, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So I think our research funding is intended for African scholars to lead their own research within the topics that they're interested in, within the scope of our research initiatives. So if you're an African scholar who fits our definition and you're interested in a pilot study or a proposal development study, I'd encourage you to think about what kinds of research questions you're interested in that may fit within our research initiatives, and then put together a proposal, maybe form a team with others from Agrodep or elsewhere and put in a proposal, and then you can run your own research. So I think the main way that you would be involved in a pilot study is that you're thinking of your own research question and you're planning to run a research study, and you're leveraging JPAL's resources and funding to be able to make that happen. We're really keen to have more local researchers really driving their own research. And so this is kind of one of the avenues or pathways where you could kind of leverage that and be able to do more work. Hope that answered your question. I don't know if others have, Claire or Emily, others, if you have further comments there.
No, not for me. I think you got it.
Thank you, Amy. So there's a popular demand for the PowerPoint slides. So yes, we will be sharing the PowerPoint slides from Agrodep and JPAL together with the recording of this meeting to all attendees. So you will be getting the materials. So there is another question for Dr. Fofana. How can members still join PAAS, TRI, Pastry, and others? If yes, what are the requirements? That's from Henry Okodwa.
Yes, that is for the trade and regional integration subnetwork. Yeah, actually, we basically the way we built this network, we we submit a call. I mean, we release a call for interest, in joining those different networks, and then Agrodep members submit their their applications. So yeah, we haven't thought about how to renew or update the membership of this group, but I think this is something that we can discuss internally with also our colleagues at IFPRI. But I think it's a good idea to think about renewing the membership of these network sub-networks, and hopefully we'll have another. We'll open it to more Agrodep members, and probably you'll get the information when when times come. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Ismail. We have one from Nicholas Ngepa. And the first question from Nicholas is, how many projects can a given think tank or scholar have with JPAL at a time? And the second one is, does JPAL fund think tanks or only individual scholars?
Yeah, those are great questions. So on the second question about who we fund, so we wouldn't be funding think tanks as an organization, but we would be funding individuals who are part of like the academic team. So we're funding kind of the project, and one of those academics on that project need to fulfill our definition of African scholar. But if there are think tank individuals from think tanks who are part of that research team, and there is somebody who is an African scholar who's eligible, they would then be able to apply for that research funding. But we wouldn't fund kind of an institution as a whole. It's more on like the PI, it's more on the academic team that's leading the work. And then I think on the second question about how many projects one could hold. So I think we have a rule at JPAL around one can submit a maximum of 3 applications for research funding within a 12-month, like a calendar year, which is 12 months. So as either the lead PI, lead academic, or a co-academic, the co-PI. So you'd have 3 shots to apply for our research funding within each initiative. Within 1 year. So I guess after the next year, then it starts again.
Great, thank you, Amy. There's another one from Patrick Irungu. When developing a proposal, is it funded at an individual African scholar level, or does it have to be a consortium of African scholars and universities?
Yeah, so I think, so it is funded at an individual level in that it's not at an institutional level, but if you would like to apply as like you are the only academic on that project, that would be completely fine. You don't have to have co-PIs on your project in order for you to be eligible to apply. If you are an African scholar by our definition, you would then be, and you're the only one on that project, that's completely fine. I think there is something quite nice about working with other team members. I think with any research projects, having a number of folks who are thinking about the question and maybe bring slightly different skills and different perspectives can be quite useful in being able to answer the question that you're interested in, and maybe it's more fun. But that's completely up to you. That's how you manage the PI team and academic team is it's not for us to say. We just need the one eligible person.
Great, thank you, Amy. There's another one from Charles Saba. How does one apply for your postdoc position?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think our postdocs are generally, as far as I understand, although I'm not very involved in the postdoc hiring process, but my understanding is that they would be, our postdoc positions kind of go through our general recruitment work as kind of staff. So I think when we do have postdoc positions, we would be publishing them on our JPAL website. So we have a kind of a careers page on our JPAL website where a number of different job opportunities, both from a staff side as well as postdocs, are published. So I think as we have new opportunities, that's the place I think one would need to look. I think we do have a kind of a jobs newsletter that comes out, which one could probably also sign up to, where as there are new jobs that are uploaded to that website, you'd be notified. So maybe have a look around the JPAL website to see what you can find there.
Great, thank you, Amy. And then there is one from Annette Adon. In the project proposal, is there room for a research honorarium for the African scholar, or should it strictly cover implementation costs?
Great, yeah, so we do have a small component where we do allow for some salaries to be included as part of the project budgets for pilots and for proposal development grants. It's not a massive amount of money, but it's a kind of, in a way, trying to be able to help buy out some of the academics' time from their teaching load as they're working on these research projects.
Thank you, Amy. I noticed someone raised their hand. Nicholas Ngepa, would you like to be given the floor? Can we unmute Mr. Nicholas Ngepa, please?
Hello, can you get me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Ngepa. Please go ahead.
Yes, I had asked that question about funding institutions or individuals, and so you fund individuals, but the grants have to be managed within a given institutional framework for accountability. I'm just wondering how it works. Because yes, you might fund an individual, but that individual has to be nested within a given organization, a think tank or a university. And so there would be that security. Is that what you're thinking about? Or you hold just that one person, that African scholar, accountable for the funds?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yes. So we would be funding the contracting goes through the universities. So we would have a contract that is between the university where the lead PI is based, who's eligible as an African scholar, and with the University of Cape Town, where the money currently sits.
Okay,
But
I was asking the question because I'd been thinking, I'm a scholar, but I've been thinking of sending an application through a think tank, African Institute for Inclusive Growth. And I had the first contact with, I think, your colleagues in Cape Town. And I was wondering if that is the way to go, which then means that the contract is sitting with the organization, not really with the individual scholar, although he is the responsible person, right?
Yeah. So I think generally it would go through, it would be a contract between the universities. And I think that it would be that the university is technically accountable, but because they're hired through the lead PI is hired through that institution, they are accountable for, but it's the university that has is signing the contract. It's not the PIs. Right. Yeah, or generally. Okay. Also, maybe not the best person to ask about the contracting side. So if you do have more specific questions or want to clarify, I can also put you in touch with Leandro, who manages the contracts from our side.
I think you have my details. You can put me in touch. I would want to speak this through so that if I'm crafting a proposal, I know how the contracting is going to work. Thank you.
Great, will do.
Thank you. Can we please unmute Oluwakemi Obayelu? Their hand is raised as well. Yes, please go ahead. Oluwakemi?
That was an error.
Okay. All right, that's fine. We don't have any more questions. I don't know if we have any final thoughts, Amy, from your side, from JPAL. Ismael, Augustin, from the Agrodep Academia 2063 side, if you have any comments, let me know so that you can say some final words before we close the session.
Great. I mean, nothing more from my side other than thank you so much for inviting us and having us as part of this session today. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see some really strong applications coming through from the Agrodep team. Thanks so much.
Augustine, do you want to go ahead on our side? Thank you.
Yes, Ismail, thank you. Thank you, Lai. Thank you to J. Paul. Thank you to the Agrodep members. I think this has been a very good meeting. I see a lot of opportunities here. I mean, using what has been presented by Aimé and the team from JPAL as a good basis going forward. Also, the reaction from the membership that I have been following on the chat, I think suggests that there is really a good prospect of us having something potentially massive going forward. The understanding is that we are kind of reassembling the Agrodep activities after the kind of slowdown that we experienced due to COVID, as explained by Dr. Badian. But going forward with the new additional networks that have been announced, one on artificial intelligence and remote sensing for agriculture, and one on RIMA, I think we are very much looking forward to broadening the base of our membership and bringing on board more experts to continue to add value to the work that we're doing. The Academia 2023 is supporting, and we're all doing this to support the African Union agenda. So on our side, we are very hopeful that we will continue, we will be looking for more experts to join as we open our next call for experts to submit applications. We look forward to continue this work with JPAL as well, and eventually broadening the basis in bringing more on board more partnerships for members, Agrodep members to benefit. I won't be long. I hand it over back to you, Lai, to guide us on the next few minutes. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Dr. Wambo Yamjer, and thank you so much to our colleagues from JPAL for your insightful presentations. There have been a lot of questions and a lot of interest in these research funding opportunities. So we have come to the end of our agenda, and we will be getting back to all attendees in a few days with the recording of this meeting as well as the PowerPoint presentations. And please do not hesitate to go to the JPAL website to get additional information. And I'm sure that Amy and the team will be in touch to respond to all your inquiries. Please don't hesitate to take a look at the resources in the chat box, the links to our newsletter subscription, where we will be sharing more of such useful information on a monthly basis, as well as our social media handles. Thank you all so much for coming, and we wish you an excellent rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.